All students.
Well, good morning, everyone, and we are going to go ahead and start. And first of all, welcome to this session. My name is Steve Brown. I work at WGTD Public Radio in Kenosha, Racine, Elkhorn, and Lake Geneva, all four of those locations. I'm a former high school teacher of journalism and social studies, and a former school principal, and also I taught at Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago, where I taught school law. I'm very pleased to be able to be involved in this presentation, and also with KEMPA. I think this is my fourth or fifth year that I've been a presenter and been involved with this outstanding organization. Like you, I was a student journalist in high school and in college, and when it comes to the rights of students, a few years ago, a current member of our U.S. Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, basically said that students should have no First Amendment rights. I repeat, Clarence Thomas basically said, almost rhetorically, but almost emphatically, why do students, or why should students have any First Amendment rights? His beliefs essentially are taking on the effect of the originalist point of view with regards to the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment to the Constitution, and I usually have a copy of it with me, and I don't have it with me at the moment, but it talks about free speech and freedom of the press, and the freedom to assemble, and the freedom to make sure that we have a right to those sorts of freedoms. And the one case in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court that still is a landmark case is the case of Tinker versus Des Moines. And I'll make a very brief introduction of Mary Beth Tinker, and then Mary Beth is going to tell her story. And we also want to make sure that there's plenty of time for you to ask questions. This is not a time for any of us to spend a lot of time up here chit-chatting about stuff, although we could do it and talk for hours, and someone who's on the radio like I am, I could talk for hours and hours, but that's not the purpose of this session. The purpose is for you to hear something about Mary Beth's story and the Tinker versus Des Moines story, and also to hear from Mike Heastand and the involvement of the Student Press Leadership Center and the work that wonderful organization does, and also the Tinker Tour, which is just an incredible enterprise that just started a couple months ago. But anyway, Mary Beth was merely a junior high student in Des Moines, Iowa, not that far from where we are right now. And she and John Tinker, her brother, and I've worked with John and Mary Beth for the last 15 years, and also Christopher Eckhart, who passed away last year, merely wore black armbands, and Mary Beth will tell more of the story. But she was born in Iowa. She lives now in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to let Mary Beth tell her story. And I know there are some, a few PowerPoint slides that they also have that they would also like to show. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further discussion and time that I'm going to take, I'd like to introduce once again Mary Beth Tinker.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. And thank you, Steve, for helping to get me here. It took a lot of emails, and to Sandy Jacoby and the Kemp. It's so great to be here with all of you today on this day for journalism. All right, journalism. What do you think? Is there a big future for journalism? Yes, of course. Such an exciting time for journalism. And I'm so honored to be here with Mike Heastand, who wrote the book about student press law. You think you need some rights if you're going to be in journalism? Yeah, you might need a few. He's helped to stand up for their rights in the student press with the Student Press Law Center. So thank you very much, Mike, for doing that. All right. And you all should really, does anybody have a copy of the book? Mike wrote the book about the student press law. It's called The Law of the Student Press. Does anybody have it? Yeah, somebody? Well, a new edition is coming out. It's really great, isn't it? It's kind of like the book to have for student press law. So there's a new edition coming out. I'm telling you guys should get it. Okay, so anyway, you know, young people all through history have been making a difference in standing up and taking our democracy forward. And we really had a long way to go forward from where we started because, thanks. Hello.
We like to walk around.
Hello? Ooh, hey, now I have the power. So, you know, where did we start from? We started from a place where we had these great ideals for democracy. Like, what? What are some of our ideals? Democratic ideals all over the world. People are looking to us for these ideals. What are some of them?
Liberty.
Liberty! Yay, liberty! All right. What else? Freedom! Justice! Justice! What else? Equality! Equality! Those are our great ideals, exactly. Now, when we started our country and built the Capitol and built, you know, the Center for Democracy all over the world, did we have those ideas? Did we have them in reality? Who helped to build the Capitol? Slaves. Who helped build the White House? Slaves. There's a statue on top of the Capitol. I mean, you really have to hand it to adults sometimes. Here's the statue on top of the Capitol. It's called the Freedom Statue. Guess who helped build it? Philip Reed, a slave. You know, if you ever want to do a really great project, check out Philip Reed. He is the one who helped put that statue on the Capitol. A slave. The Freedom Statue. That's where we're coming from. So to meet our ideals, we had to have people like all of you, especially young people who have these great qualities, who see. Now wait a second, that's not quite right, having a freedom statue that's built by slaves. You know, there's a little problem there. And you had people that were young and who saw, you know, that we should have our own ideas. We should be able to think for ourselves. People like a young homeless runaway, Ben Franklin. Yeah. He wrote these great articles about how we should have our own thoughts, we should have our own ideas. And then he grew up and was one of the leaders in the American Revolution. But you know, when he grew up, he had a few problems too. He sold slaves himself. You can see the advertisements for his slaves that are in his shop in Philadelphia. So it took more people to come along and say, now wait a second, that's not right, that's not our ideals, that's not democracy, we can do better. Because young people have a quality that you're famous for all over the world, and it's something that Einstein said is more important even than knowledge. Anybody know what it is? What quality is so important that Einstein, he's a pretty smart guy, what? Imagination! All right, imagination. Einstein said that's more important than knowledge. So in order to take our democracy forward, which young people have always done all through history, you're going to need some rights. You think so? Yeah, okay, so let's hear them. They did this study showing, oh, these kids today don't even know their rights, it's so sad. But then guess what? They went out and interviewed the teachers and adults. They didn't know their rights either. Let's see how you guys do. What's one of the rights of the First Amendment? The freedom to, who said it? Religion, come on up, come on up, come on up, come on. Come on up here. All right. Woo. All right, tell us your name. Olivia, come on, stand right up here. Help us with this little review here. The freedom of religion. All right, guess how many people knew about that?
Take a stab. What percent?
50? Oh, I wish. Sorry, 16. Yeah. But you can help them learn these by your work in journalism. Yeah, that's what's so great about journalism. Okay, so what's another one?
Freedom of the press.
Freedom of the press! Come on up! Freedom of the press. We kind of need that, don't we? Do you have to check with the government before you write an article?
No.
What is your name, my dear? Emmy! Go, Emmy!
Freedom of the press.
Guess how many people knew that, Emmy? You won't believe this. But come on, give us a little credit. A little, 15, like more, come on. 40% people know that. All right, that's not too bad. We have some work to do, right? Okay, what's another one? Who said that? Speech. Who said that? Come on up, come on. Freedom of, what'd you say? Freedom of speech, yeah. Now, you can use your freedom of speech right this second. Tell us your name. Courtney, all right, Courtney, freedom of speech. Yeah, do we have a right to speak? Do kids have these rights? Yeah. Some people don't think so, but you have these. Do these have limits? Do all these rights have limits? Can you go out in the middle of the busiest street in Whitewater today and be like, oh, we're going to have our freedom of speech in the middle of the street today? You have to respect the rights of others, too. Okay, so Courtney, that's great. Free speech. Now, that one was one of the more known rights. How many do you think knew that?
Right to petition the government.
Whoa, I can't believe you said that. The right to petition, come on. 60% of people knew the freedom of speech. But the right to petition the government, on the other hand, almost no one knew that. Guess how many people? Well, you just saw one person. I know there's more than one now. The right to petition the government. Tell me your name. Tubby. All right.
How many people do you think knew that?
4. Cut 4 in half. You didn't know you were going to do higher math. Okay, 2%. 2%. Tubby.
Did that.
Just beat out 98% of Americans. Good going. Okay. What? Now you can go over this with your family when you get home tonight. See how they do. What's the very last one? Assembly. Come on. Freedom to assemble. Yeah. Tell us your name. Kaylee. All right. And can you go out and assemble in the street tonight on rush hour? No. Because other people have rights too. That's the thing about it. All right. The freedom to assemble. So we have I believe, I write, I speak, I petition, I gather. Okay, here's to the First Amendment. Thank you for that little review, everybody. Now we gotta have the Kodak moment. Here's it. All right, the freedom to assemble. We are assembling right now. Okay. All right, guys, that's great. You kind of need these rights. They're kind of important. They're kind of really great to have, you know? Some people may not want us to have them, but we're going to stand up for them, and we're going to keep standing up for them, because that's how we can make a better world. Yeah. That's how we can make the world better. Do we have things we want to improve in the world today? Yeah. Who's exactly happy with the way the world is right now? It's exactly perfect. There's no improvement to be made. We need to improve the world. And that's why we need journalism. We need to know what's going on in the world so that we can make it better, so that we can take it forward. And young people have done this all through history. And I can tell you about little children who stood up for their rights in the mines. People like John Mitchell. Or I can tell you about children who stood up for their rights in the factories. Guess who the first factory workers were? What age? Children, 8, 10, 12-year-olds. Yeah. Guess who fought in every single war? Children, teenagers. Guess who helped to build our country by working in the farms, working in the plantations? Kids. Kids have helped to build our country, and kids should have some rights. Kids are building our country right now. And if you work, yeah, your job is also going to school. You work, just going to school. Being here today, that's a job, right? Kind of fun. All right, so young people have built our country all through history. And I'm going to tell you about a time in the early 1960s when I was growing up. Oh, it was so cute. I had this little flip. It was really great. But my dad, it seemed like all the people I knew in life were just so strong and brave. Like my dad, he was a preacher at the church next door, at the Methodist church. And he would get up on Sunday morning and talk about brotherhood and love and all the things you talk about in church. And he would say, we would sing songs in the choir like, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Ever heard that song? Some of you? Yeah. That's one of my favorites. I love that song. But, oh no, down the street, it looks like not everybody loved the little children, because guess what? The swimming pool would not let some children swim there. Which children?
How did you guess?
The black children could not go there swimming. And this was true in Wisconsin and places. It was true all over the country then. Okay, well, some of the kids see the power of young people. They said, that's not fair. That's not right. That's not Christian. That's not democratic. They had imagination. They could imagine a better way. And they went up to the swimming pool. They went up to the city hall. My dad said he would go with them. And they said, that should change. Because kids aren't satisfied with the way things are. They want to do things better. And so they went up there. Guess what the city hall said? Too bad. Nope, that's the way we've always done things. See, that's how people do sometimes. But they weren't satisfied. They kept speaking up. They kept talking about it. And eventually it changed. But in the meantime, my dad got kicked out of that church. We got put out, and we had to move to a whole different town. And it was in Des Moines, Iowa. Well, up in Des Moines in the 60s, in the early 60s, again, you know, people were standing up and speaking up. People like my mother. She was a brave, strong person, too. Not like me. I wasn't like that. I was thin and shy, and I was one of the youngest in the family. And I just, you know, went skating on the weekends with my friend Connie. But other people in my life were strong and brave and stood up for what they believed in. People like my mother. What she would do on the weekends, she would go up to the local drugstore where they wouldn't hire certain people. Guess who wouldn't be hired? Yes. Black people. And so she would go up there and she would picket with her picket signs, and her friend Edna, and they would sing songs like, I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. I woke up this morning. Yeah, they were singing those freedom songs up there. Sometimes they would take me along with them. Ever hear that song? So they would take me sometimes. I thought, that's great, those people are standing up and speaking up for what's right. I'm not like that, though. I'm shy. I go skating. I got good grades. I had to study my math. That was my favorite subject, math. I'm not like that. And there were strong people like my sister. She stood up and she spoke up. My older sister, Bonnie, she spoke up so much that she won the national essay contest on what the Emancipation Proclamation means to me. And in her essay, she said, yeah, it's good we had that freeing the slaves, but we still have a lot of work to do to make things equal and democratic in our world. She stood up for what she believed. But I said, I'm not like that. I don't win national essay contests. Well, one year things started to change because I saw on TV with my sister Hope some kids in Birmingham, Alabama. And that year, they decided to speak up and stand up about segregation. And Martin Luther King was down there, and he wrote his famous letter from Birmingham jail. But he couldn't get the adults of Birmingham to stand up. Why? Because they knew if they did, they could get lynched, or killed, or cut up and thrown in the river, which really happened to black people there who stood up and spoke up. So the adults weren't exactly signing up for his plan, but the kids said, we will do it, we will do it. And that year, almost 2,000 kids marched out of the 16th Street Baptist Church, and they were singing songs like, we shall not be moved, we shall not be moved. And they were standing up for justice, all our democratic ideals and equality. And when they marched out of the church, the fire department turned their hoses on them, double strength. And on TV in Iowa, we saw these kids getting shot across the street, with their water hoses getting, aimed on them. And we saw the police chief, Bull Connor, and he sicked the dogs on them, the German shepherds, and these dogs would attack the children and tear their pants and tear their legs. And this is the power of journalism. Because up in Iowa, in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, in Illinois, all over the country, people saw what was happening in Birmingham, Alabama, and they saw the truth of our great democracy and our great center of freedom and equality. And they said, this is not right. And then next year, we had the March on Washington, and eventually the Ku Klux Klan, later that year, they even bombed those girls' church. Those kids' church, those boys and girls, but The girls were the ones that got killed in that church. Cynthia, Addie Mae, Carol. Their bodies were found in the stairwell of the church that year, 1963. I was 11 years old. And I saw all this on TV, and I heard about all this. And that year, we started to see this, and we thought, wow, these kids are really strong and brave. And so then, you know, the next year, there was something called Freedom Summer, where thousands of college students went from all over the country. The power of young people. They went down to Mississippi. Well, just register African Americans to vote. And as soon as they got there, 3 of them were killed by the Ku Klux Klan, and their names were Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman. And again, it went out over all the press and all the papers around the country. And this is how people started to learn what was really going on. Well, my parents heard about it too. And a call went out. They said, people, please come to Mississippi this year so these kids don't get killed. My parents went down there. When they came back, well, I wasn't like that. I wasn't strong and brave. I didn't go to Mississippi. I didn't risk my life. I was up in Iowa playing croquet that summer. Yeah, it's really good. But when they came back, they told us about the strong people, the brave people that were there in Mississippi, and how my parents had to hide on the floor of the station wagon as they drove through town so they wouldn't be killed by the Ku Klux Klan. We started to get the idea that standing up for what you believe in and for democracy is a life worth living. Yes, it has its risks, but it's worth living. And the next year in 1965, the Vietnam War was what we were watching on TV that year. My little sister Hope and I, again, we would come home after school. We had to cook dinner. That was our job. Well, by now we had 6 kids in the family, so we were busy doing our job every night. But then we would turn on the TV. What did we see on TV? We would see war, the Vietnam War, the huts on fire, the power of the news. Yes, we were sad, but it was real. And we would see the soldiers lying on the ground in their body bags. Every night there was a newscaster named Walter Cronkite, and he would give a body count every night. He would say, the body count tonight in Vietnam is 8 soldiers dead. And us kids would be watching this on TV. The next night, there are 10 soldiers dead today in Vietnam. The body count is 10 today. Every night we saw this on the news, and we started getting more and more upset, more and more worried. And I would think about it in bed when I was lying there trying to go to sleep, not knowing what I could do, because speaking up about these things, that was something other people did. I didn't do that. I got good grades. I studied. And some children were experiencing war in a different way, because children are some of the most affected by all war. People like Mike Heaston, who I'm so lucky to be on this Tinker tour with, who has spent many years standing up for the rights of students to speak up. And at that time, he had his own feelings about how he was experiencing the war. And I want Mike to just share that.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here. I'm actually a Marquette grad, and it's wonderful to be back home. Mary Beth was just talking about 1963, and it was a big year for a lot of things in American history. One big thing she didn't mention, though, is my birthday. I was born November 6th of that year, so I've got about 2 weeks to go or so before my big 5-0. But I was born at Williams Air Force Base, which is down in Arizona. And we were down there because my dad had just graduated from college and was in the Air Force and was down to do pilot training. He was a fighter pilot, jet. And so we were down there, and as luck would have it, at the same time, my uncle was down at Williams. He was a trainer for fighter pilots. And so my uncle was my mom's only brother, in fact, only sibling. And so they were down there, and it was a really special time, I know, for the families. In fact, this summer I was going through some social slides with my great aunt, and I pulled out some slides of about that time. And there's lots of pictures of me and my cousins. I had about, I think there were 4 older cousins at the time. A couple of them were girls, and so here's this little baby being kind of tossed back and forth with the kids. And it was just a really special time. It was a really great photos, family photos there. About 3 years later after that, I guess, in September of 1966, my uncle, it was time for him to go to Vietnam. And so he was shipped off, and 2 weeks after he got there, his plane was shot down and he was killed. And he left behind, at the time, I had 5 cousins, because when he left, my aunt was pregnant with my 5th cousin, Chris. So about 2.5 years after that, I was 5.5 years old. It was my dad's turn to go to the war. And at this time we were down at Eglin Air Force Base down in Florida. And my very first memory really on the planet Earth was the night before he was scheduled to be shipped off. They had tucked me in along with I had 3 younger brothers. And for whatever reason, I got up. It was probably close to midnight, it was late. And I wandered into their bedroom, and they didn't see me at first. So I was just kind of at the doorway looking out. And I remember them just kind of holding each other and just crying. And so at some point they did see me, and they turned around, everything's okay, don't worry. And they went and tucked me in. But as I was 5.5, you knew, even at 5.5, I don't think we give our kids credit enough sometimes, but at 5.5, you knew that everything wasn't okay. That something was seriously wrong. So the next morning, my mom packed us up into the station wagon, and so me and my little brothers, and we went down to the end of the runway because my dad was going to take off with his squadron, and they flew these F-4 Phantoms. I don't know if any of you are big plane fans, but the F-4 Phantom is a storied jet in Air Force history. In fact, for many years it was the Thunderbirds, Air Force Thunderbirds jet, which is this magnificent jet. It's really known for just its roar. It just shakes you to your bones. And so we were at the end of the runway, and I remember the planes flying over us and just shaking the station wagon. And I looked over and saw my mom at the wheel, and she's just kind of just doing her best to hold it together. So, I didn't know anything about the Vietnam War at the time. I was 5.5. I knew my dad was gone, but I didn't know anything about the politics. Didn't know anything about economics, things that I later learned about the war. But the one thing that I did know, and one thing that Mary Beth talks about, is just the sadness that you feel. It was just, I knew that I was very sad. Had I had a black armband, I certainly would put it on. And I think that's something that we really need to hear from our kids sometimes, all the time, actually. For whatever reason, we adults, as you grow up, you lose something. You lose just a basic thing. Even if you're just sad about something, whether it's the war, or the environment, or whatever, I think, we adults need to be reminded. We need to hear from young people. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do on our tours. We just, we're reminding students, say what you need to say, because we as adults, we need to hear it. So the good news is that last year we celebrated my parents' 50th wedding anniversary with a trip up to Alaska. Everything turned out fine. But yeah, say what you guys need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for saying what you need to say all these years and now. Thank you. Yes, we did feel very sad about what was going on in the war and very upset about what was going on in the war. And some of the boys in our neighborhood were being called up in the draft. So some of the older kids, my older brother John, he was so smart. He always had an idea of what to do about things. My older sister Bonnie and some of the boys at the high school, they thought, well, I know what we could do. We could wear black armbands to school, and we could show that we're upset about the war. And we could also support the call for a Christmas truce that Robert Kennedy was calling for that year, Senator Robert Kennedy. And it would be our symbol to mourn the dead in Vietnam. Well, we decided, and then they said, yeah, Beth, you can do it too. They called me Beth then. You can do it too, come on, we'll wear black armbands to school. And even little Hope and Paul, they said, they could do it too. And I said, well, I don't know, that wasn't really how I was, but they said, come on, you can do it. So I thought, well, maybe I could. The problem was a couple days before we were supposed to do it, the principals in Des Moines, Iowa, heard about our plan. And they had a hasty meeting and they made a rule against wearing armbands. And it came out in the Des Moines Register, the local newspaper. Armbands in school to be banned. Any child wearing a black armband to school will be suspended from school. Oh no, I saw it in the morning paper, and then I didn't know what to do. Because I wasn't one to get suspended and get in trouble in school. I had never been in trouble in school. Okay, there was that time in 3rd grade when I almost got spanked. But besides that, I had almost never been. And I didn't know what to do. But my brother and the older kids, they said, come on, we can do it. We really believe this. Look at those other kids who've been standing up and speaking. So in the end, I decided that I would just wear this little armband to school. And even Hope and Paul took some cloth from our cloth box there that we had, and they put some armbands on. They decided they were going to wear armbands. They said, we want peace. And so we decided to go to school with our armbands. My brother decided to wait till the next day. After he had encouraged us to do it, he decided to wait till the next day. So I went off to school, and I was really scared, and I was nervous, and I picked up my friend Connie on the way. And when I got to school, I was getting more and more nervous, and some kids said, why are you wearing that armband? You know you're going to get in trouble. And I said, but I want to speak up about the war. It's about the Vietnam War. And I even had a little petition that the kids were supposed to sign to say that they wanted a truce in the war, like Robert Kennedy was calling. Well, then I got to my math class, Mr. Moberly's class, my favorite class. And there's Mr. Moberly standing by the door of class with a pink slip in his hand. And then I knew I was in trouble. That's not a good sign. So I took the pink slip. He said, Mary Beth, I'm surprised at you. You know you're not supposed to be wearing a black armband to school. So go down to the office. So I took my pink slip and I walked, how do you think I was walking? Really slowly to the office. I was really scared. I was 13. I was in 8th grade. When I got to the office, there's Mrs. Tanner, the girl's advisor, and she said, now sit down. You know you're not supposed to be wearing an armband to school, so sit right down and take off that armband. So in a great stand of courage and conviction, I said, okay, Mrs. Tanner, here you go. Here you go. Okay, that's over. I was thinking, that's over. She said, now go back to math class right now. So I went back there. I sat down. Then there was a boy in the doorway saying, Mary Beth Tinker wanted in the office. I said, oh no. So I went back to the office, and Miss Tanner said, I'm going to have to suspend you anyway because you knew you weren't supposed to be wearing that armband to school. See, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. See how little things that happen in life? Use that little tiny bit of courage you have to speak up for something, and it can go a long way, as it turns out. Because then I went home, and some of the people from the church were there. By then, my parents were with the Quaker meeting, the Quaker church. Have you ever heard of the Quakers? They're all about peace. By then, my dad had left the other church, the second church there, the Methodist church, and we were with the Quakers. So in church, we would learn all about peace. And some of the people from the Quaker meeting were there, and they said, oh, you're brave and strong. You stood up for what you believe. And I said, yeah, I am, okay. And then people asked me, reporters would come and say, well, how did it feel to be so brave and strong and speak up for your beliefs? And, oh, yeah, I was I guess, maybe. I didn't really feel brave and strong. I thought that was what other people do. But then it turned out I had done it. And people started asking me to talk about it and to even write little articles and things about it. And it would have been the end of the whole thing. Well, the same day that I was suspended, there was a boy named Chris Eckhart, and he was over at his school, at the high school, and he was really getting hassled and threatened by this assistant principal. And he asked him, would you like a busted nose? Later in court, the principal said, I wasn't threatening to bust his nose, I was just asking him if he wanted to bust his nose. And the football players came and defended Chris. And they said, we may not agree with what Chris is saying about the war, but he has the right to say that because we live in a democracy. And the next day, my brother John wore an armband to school and he got suspended. And there were a few kids, not very many, a handful of kids that got suspended. And there's a couple of them right there. Chris Singer, Ross Peterson, And there's my brave mother and my brave father. And we were at the school board meeting there because we went to the school board. We tried to change their mind. We tried to get them to say that armbands would be okay because we hadn't disturbed anything, we hadn't bothered anyone, but they wouldn't change their mind. It would have been the end of the whole thing, except for a group called the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Has anybody ever heard of them? They end up at the Supreme Court more than any organization in the United States. Why? Because their whole thing is to stand up for the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. They've been doing that for about 100 years. And they came to my family and they said they thought that kids should have rights too. And so they offered a lawyer. And the case, it went to court. And it went to the district court where we lost. It was appealed to the appeals court. Again, we lost. Well, of course, I thought we were going to lose the whole thing because you can't, kids don't have rights. I thought we didn't really have rights. And kids can't stand up against people like the math teacher. No way. And I was really surprised when it got appealed to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court agreed to hear it because they only take a very few cases that come to them. But they thought it was important to decide if kids do have rights in school. And then in 1969, when I was in 11th grade, the court ruled that yes, they ruled by 7-2, yes, you do have a right to speak up for your beliefs in public school. Saying that neither teachers, where's teachers? Yay, teachers! Neither teachers or students lose their rights, their constitutional rights, at the schoolhouse gate. And the court's ruling said that, I love this one, students are persons under our Constitution. Yeah, how's it feel, guys? Like being persons? It's kind of nice, huh?
And so,
it was a breakthrough because people hadn't ever said that about students in school. And I went on, I grew up, and John grew up, Chris Eckhart grew up. I became a nurse. I had no idea this was such an important case. When I was in nursing school, guess what? I was studying for a test one time, and there's the case in my nursing school book. Because they were teaching nurses about the rights of children. They thought it was important that nurses should know these things. And I slowly started realizing that this was an important deal, children's rights. And I started talking more and more to children and teenagers all over the country, and I realized, you know what, this is actually an international issue. There are children all over the world that are speaking up. Children like Malala in Pakistan. You've heard of her? Yeah, she stood up for the right to go to school. Children like Sarah in Alabama. She started a petition and got 250,000 signatures on it about a toxic chemical in Gatorade. You guys like Gatorade? Check it out. Brominated vegetable oil. She got it taken out of Gatorade. Go Sarah. And so I started realizing that this is an international issue, not only it's not just for our country, but it's around the world. Young people are speaking up and standing up. And I'll just end by telling you some of the words that they took to the United Nations, some of these kids. These were American kids. They gave a speech at the United Nations in favor of the Declaration of the Rights of Children there. There are only 2 countries that have not signed the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Children. And one of them is, guess which country? The United States. Did you say Iran? No, it's actually the United States. The United States. I don't get it. But anyway, so these kids went there and they were trying to get us to sign that. And so they said, we are not the problem. We are the solution. And yes, you say that we are the future, but we are also the present. So thank you all for having us here today. Thank you for being in the present. And I know that you will go on and do great things in journalism. Have a great day. Stand up for your rights. Who would like to stand up for your right to say something, make a comment, tell us how you're using your First Amendment rights. Tell us what you're doing and where you're from. Yes, come on, stand up. All right, hey, if we have to stand up, you have to. What's your name?
Jenna.
Hey, Jenna, what do you have to say?
How does it feel to know that your name is in textbooks and kids are doing projects about you all across the nation?
It's completely crazy. I mean, look how, you see what a little thing it seemed that I was doing, right? But that's what I found out later, that that is actually what makes history, right, Steve? It's the little things. It's the little things we do in life. The little choices we make with our lives. The times we decide to stand up about something we care about. That's what's going to make history. And you won't know at the time that you're making history, probably. That's the amazing thing. Thank you. Yes.
So I'm Emmy, and I was just wondering that you said that other kids at like the high school were being, harassed for what they were standing up for. Did you have any, people that were against you standing up for your rights and your beliefs?
Poor Chris, he really got hassled over at the high school, at Roosevelt High School, but I really didn't get much at Harding. One of the teachers kind of made fun of me a little bit, but mostly it was people from the community, adults, who bullied us, if there was bullying, which there was. For example, some people threw red paint at our house. Some people called our house on Christmas Eve, because this all happened right around Christmas in 1965. They called our house on Christmas Eve and threatened to bomb the house. Like, your house is going to be bombed by morning. Oh yeah, Merry Christmas! Then when I was going off to school a couple weeks later, in January, we went back to school without armbands. Well, then we wore all black clothes. Yeah, see the creativity of the kids. We wore all black clothes for the rest of the year. Because we said, they can't tell us to take our clothes off. And so, as I was going out to school one day, someone calls and they're like, is this Mary Beth Tinker? I said, yes. She said, I'm going to kill you. I said, these people are crazy. They did stuff like send us this postcard. Oh yeah, here's one of my favorites. It's so artistic. Can you guys see it? It says like, what's the message there? It's kind of clear. I hate you. Hate. What's that red thing? Communists. They always said we were communists. I never quite got why they always said, well, I did learn later why they called us communists. My mother always said, what did my mother say? We're not communists, we're Methodists. Why couldn't I get that straight? Yes.
How did you deal with being threatened, and what drove you to continue doing what you were doing?
You know how I dealt with it? I was so lucky. I had these strong-brained parents who had risked their lives to stand up for what they believed in, and they had given us these examples of others too. Like Fannie Lou Hamer down in Mississippi, they told us about her and how she had been beaten. She was this sharecropper, this older black woman. They told us these stories about kids through history, and that was my example. I think that's how I dealt with it. Because I kept thinking, this is nothing compared to what some of these people have dealt with. Like getting dogs put on you, that would really be scary.
Hi, I'm Ariel. I was just wondering, how did it feel to be in court at such a young age?
How did it feel to be in court? It felt so strange. It felt like the whole thing, it really was strange. And I had no idea how important it was going to be. You'd think, the Supreme Court, hello, that's kind of important, but it really took me a while to realize how important it was, especially the Supreme Court, because right then I had just moved to a brand new school in a whole new city. Imagine it's November of your junior year in high school. Any juniors? Okay, how would you like to just move right now to a brand new city, a brand new school? You know no one. And then 1 month later, they're like, oh, we're going to the Supreme Court this month, okay? Oh, okay, whatever. Yeah. So when I got there, I barely remember it. I think I was thinking more about who I was going to be friends with in algebra class and whether I could finally stop eating my lunch in the bathroom. I was so shy. Anyway.
Hi, I'm Becca. I was just wondering, when was it that made you realize you were doing the right thing?
Oh, when did I realize? I think I felt all along that I was doing the right thing. Because, by this time, my family were Quakers, and they were really, into peace, and we would go to summer camp and sing songs like, torment, you guys know. Let's see, I ain't gonna study war no more, I ain't gonna study war no more, I ain't gonna study war no more. You're singing songs like that, I felt like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. Gotta stand up for peace. Stand up for peace in the world. So I believed it was the right thing the whole time. I just didn't get that it was a really, really important case for a long time. And that it affected so many kids. And, whether kids are going to be able to wear shirts, that say things like, a rainbow. Or a shirt that has a rainbow with a slash through it. Kids have a right to wear things like, both ways. There are cases where kids have worn red armbands to protest abortion. This is in New Jersey. The girl got in trouble, got suspended. This was just a few years ago. And she was able to wear that armband because of the Tinker case. And that was another ACLU case. Or whether students are going to be able to write in their newspapers about polluting buses in their neighborhoods, like Katie Dean did in Michigan.
Say, Mary Beth, I understand there are some schools around the country, even right here in Wisconsin, that are telling the student journalist that they cannot print stories that are political, that may be controversial, that people might disagree with. Have you heard stories like that before?
I have heard that, yes.
And what's your reaction to that?
Yesterday.
And how do you think that?
Well, yeah, some students are being told not to put anything political in their newspapers. Have you guys ever heard this? You hear this kind of thing? Now, don't make it political. But I don't think that's fair, because you are going to be affected by political decisions that are made, by politicians making decisions. Those are going to affect your lives very much. It's going to affect whether you have polluted air. It's going to affect whether you have to pay higher tuition. It's going to affect whether your families are going to war. Who has someone in the war right now, by the way? Yeah, quite a few. And I know you're thinking about him. Who is in the war?
My cousin Matt.
Your cousin Matt. You're thinking about him, right? We're all thinking about these people. So I say, that's not right. That's not fair. In democracy, the ones who are affected by the decisions are supposed to have a say in the decisions. And I think that should go for kids too. What do you guys think? Right. Really, I think the voting age should be lowered myself.
We have about 3 more minutes.
I'm Becca, and I was wondering, how many students did you get to join in on your protests?
Oh, now you're gonna embarrass me. Okay, I had this petition. Maybe like 6 kids were suspended. There was one other boy that wore an armband that wasn't suspended because he got the date wrong and he wore his before the ruling came out. That was Perry. There was like 6 or 7, 8 kids. And then I was supposed to get this petition signed. I can show it to you later. I got my signatures on it. And my best friend Marcia's, hers is on it. But 2 other kids signed it and then crossed it off later. So I wasn't exactly, the prime organizer of all time.
I do want to let you all know about a book. It's called Let the Students Speak.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
It's written by David Hudson, Jr. In fact, it just won a major award, and it's printed by Beacon Press. And Mary Beth and I have presented with David, and he worked for a wonderful organization, the First Amendment Center in Washington, D.C. And I just wanted to read one very quick section, because I know our session is about over. He said, many students learn little about the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, other than the fact that censorship is alive and well. The American Bar Association president wrote back in 2010 that today there is significantly less understanding, as you pointed out in the survey that you were talking about when you gave out those wonderful T-shirts, an appreciation of our Constitution and its role in preserving freedom. It's the Tinker case. It's Tinker versus Des Moines, that every single case dealing with the First Amendment rights of students and teachers and public employees and anyone in this country, all of those cases go back to Tinker versus Des Moines. The only other case in the history of our country that is more significant that pertains to public education is the case of Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 that integrated our public schools. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Beth Tinker.
Thank you very much for having us here today. Thank you, Steve. And I just want to add that there were a few cases, as you mentioned, that cut back on the rights of students. Like, any of you journalists know a big one for journalism? Hazelwood. There was one called Bethel versus Frazier, right? Said that you can't have lewd speech in school. I know you're all really sad about that. And let's see, there was also the infamous one in Juneau, Alaska, having to do with Bong Hits for Jesus. That was Joseph Frederick. He found that on a snowboard. So there have been cases since, and all 4 of those are ACLU cases, ours and the other 3. So thank you again, and yes, Mike.
We'll talk about those in the very next session.
What's that? And we're going to talk about those in the next session. If you want to stay, we're going to have Life After Tinker, yes. And the cases and how it affects, you know, social media, how it affects Facebook. Some very interesting situations that young people have been involved with, involving tweeting and things like that. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.